Hello and welcome to the Dead on Arrival podcast, presented by the Reverend Dr. Donald E. Dunnigan Sr. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
Thank you, Dr. Dennery, for reading the scripture today, coming from the Gospel of John, chapter 5. That's where I would like to launch the message from today, the Gospel of John, chapter 5. And specifically, I'd like to focus in on verse 6. When Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time, when Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time. From the A portion of the Gospel of John, chapter number 5 and verse number 6, let's consider this thought for a subject today. Jesus knows all about your struggles. Jesus knows all about your struggle. Jesus knows all about my struggle. Jesus knows all about our struggles. I can think of several instances throughout the scriptures where people going through some sort of struggle found comfort in God showing up at what seems to be just the right time. One of them is in Hagar, in Genesis with Hagar, the 16th chapter. You remember the story, how Hagar had been put out and wasn't sure how she was going to make it. But God showed up at just the right time. Another one is Job, in the book of Job, chapter number 38. Remember, Job was wondering where was God in the midst of his struggle. And God showed up with his guns blazing. Job, what do you mean to question my wisdom? Where were you when the foundations were laid? God showed up at just the right time for Moses when he was leading the children of Israel through the Red Sea, and they were concerned that Pharaoh's army was going to capture and or destroy them in Exodus chapter 14. And here in the Gospel of John, chapter number 5 and verse number 6, when Jesus saw him and knew he had been ill for a long time. Jesus knows all about your struggle. You came in here today with something on your heart, something in your mind, something perhaps bogging you down concerning you, but I want you to know that you came in here not alone. Jesus knows all about your struggle. A couple of weeks ago, and I'm not making this up, but a couple of weeks ago, I went to the drugstore to get some over-the-counter supplement. It was Airborne. I don't know why I listened to my mentor, Deacon Moore, but he said whenever he feels a cold coming on, he gets Airborne. So I went to go get me some Airborne. I felt like a cold was coming on, and I went into the store and I asked them where the Airborne was. Showed me where it was. I got it, and I picked it up, went to the counter, and I paid for it. And then I went out to my car, and my wife was sitting in the car waiting for me, and I opened up the box, and then I opened up the bottle and unsealed it, and I took one of those supplements, chewables. I said, honey, I feel better already. She has to tolerate that sense of humor, but I told her I felt better. And then while I was sitting there feeling better, I checked the expiration date, and I discovered that it had expired on 11/20/23. And I said, honey, all of a sudden I don't feel better anymore. I went back into the store and I returned the product, told one of the associates what the situation was, and he says, no problem, just get another one. And I got another one. I checked the expiration date this time, and off I went. Then a couple of days later, I went to the grocery store and I said, well, I'm feeling better, but I might want to get some orange juice, but not just any orange juice. You got all of these selections. You got the Florida's, whatever, Nature's, just Tropicana, all these different brands. So I said, I'm going to get me some orange juice that's got vitamin D. And since I want to keep my diabetical situation where it needs to be, I said, I'm going to get some with the low sugar, that half the sugar. So I got it, and I went up to the register and I paid for it, and I took it out to the car. But then my brain said, hey, you might want to check the expiration date. And I checked the expiration date, and I'm not making this up. The orange juice expired the day before. So I returned it and I replaced it, and I got something that was good. But I'm only sharing this with you because I wanted to do a poll to see how many of you would acquire a product near or after the expiration date and keep the product and use it after the expiration. Just raise your hand if you would do that. You would buy a product after it's expired, and you would keep it and you would use it. I just wanted to know, you not intentionally. No, not intentionally. You intentionally, you discover. Okay, all right. Let me ask it this way. And let me ask it a little bit differently. I want to ask you, how many of you would return a product after it has expired and you know that it is expired? If you were in my situation, how many of you would have done pretty much the same thing? All right, about half of you would have kept it, right? And half of you would have took it back. That's good, because the main ideal in this story, as recorded by Jesus, I believe Jesus is trying to show us and help us understand that our struggles come with an expiration date. Our struggles come with an expiration date. And I hope to provide some sound exegesis to support this claim. So it says, when Jesus saw him, the word for saw indicates that Jesus was not only engaged in the simple act of seeing, but Jesus was engaged in something much deeper. Jesus was engaged in perceiving him. So when Jesus perceived him, when Jesus saw him, horeo is the word in the Greek, and it indicates that he is looking into this person as if to see and read what's really going on in his life. Jesus perceived him, like when Jesus healed the 10 lepers. Remember, one of them came back and said, thank you. Yes. But he came back when he saw that he was healed. All of them were healed, but only one of them saw that he was healed. And when he saw that he was healed, he came back to say thank you to Jesus. To perceive someone, you have to be willing to relinquish a piece of yourself. Jesus had enhanced his perception to such a level that he could read this man. He could scan this man's essence. And I need to let you know that it does not require your consent in order for someone to read you. You can walk in a room and anyone with the ability and gift to perceive can detect what's coming into the room. You might hear people say it like this: when she came in, I got a good vibe, or I got a bad vibe. The man was lying there and did not know who Jesus was. However, when you are open, it is easy to perceive you. Perceiving happens on an energetic level, not what you can touch with your physical body only, but by what you can access through clarity of perception. I'm going somewhere with this, so hang on here with me just a minute. Remember the story in Luke where a woman touched the hem of Jesus's garment? Remember that story? Or she touched the fringes of his robe in Luke chapter 8 and verse 43. A woman in the crowd has suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding, and she could find no cure. But coming up behind Jesus, she touched the hem of his garment, and immediately the bleeding stopped. Who touched me? Jesus asked. Everyone denied it. And Peter said, Master, this whole crowd is pressing up against you. But Jesus said, someone deliberately touched me, for I felt healing power go out from me. When the woman realized that she could not stay hidden, she began to tremble and fell to her knees in front of him. The whole crowd heard her explain why she had touched him and that she had been immediately healed. And this is what Jesus said. Daughter, he said, your faith has made you well. She had the ability to perceive that there was healing power in Jesus. Oh man, I'm hoping you work with me here. You can go into some environments, and if you are able to perceive what is available, it is available for the taking. Daughter, your faith has made you well. Jesus perceived this man. When Jesus perceived this man, he realized that this man's physical paralysis was only a symptom of a deeper force working within him. This man was bearing something much deeper. So watch. Here, I want to give you 3 points. Here is the inquiry. The man said to, Jesus said to the man, do you want to be made whole? Do you want to be made well? Here is the inquiry. If the man was taken to a mental health facility, they would have performed a test that would have had over 100 questions. They would have asked him, perform the Minnesota multiphasic personality inventory. Dr. Janice is over there just laughing, like, what you know about that, Pastor? See, I can read too, Doc. The Milan Clinical Multi-Axle Inventory. Was he suffering from a neurosis? Was he suffering from a psychosis? Was he just depressed? What caused this man to be in this condition for 38 years? Maybe they would have taken a CAT scan, but Jesus made one simple inquiry. Do you want to be made well? Oh, that's the question. That's the question. That's the question. Sometimes we hold on to a product long after it has expired. But the question is, do we want to be made well? Now, he was just hanging out. Here's this man. He's just hanging out by the sheep gate. And I love the details that John provides. The sheep gate is the place where society abandoned the unwanted people. He was hanging out in the place where the unwanted people were hanging out. And this is the place one step away from where the sheep were to be taken to be sacrificed. This man's answer suggests he is not neurotic or psychotic. He simply responded by telling Jesus that he has been unsuccessful at getting to the troubled waters in time. Here is where I believe Jesus is teaching us that our struggles come with an expiration date. Here is the injunction. Watch. Jesus asks him a question. That's the inquiry. And then once the man responded, Jesus is in essence telling this man he's been laying here long past the expiration date of his paralysis. Jesus said, you've been here for 38 years, and I only ask you one question. And see, here's how I know Jesus was really doing a scan, and he perceived him, because the man didn't have a neurosis. He really was hanging out at the crowd, and he asked answered Jesus' question. He said, I can't get well, sir, because I have no one to help me when the water is troubled. And someone always gets there before I get there. Jesus gives the injunction. You know what an injunction is? An injunction is when you tell someone to do something and you have authority to tell them to do it. Jesus said, stand up, pick up your bed, and walk. Stand up, pick up your bed, and walk. I interpreted this as Jesus saying, you have no right to remain paralyzed when your paralyzation has expired. Sometimes we stay in our predicament long beyond the time that it has expired, when Jesus has given us the authority to come out of the predicament. It's expired. You need to take that back, return it. You don't need to hold on to an expired product because it's not going to provide you what you're looking for. It's beyond its expiration date. 2024 is going to be the year when we will be discarding some of our expired products. See, I have already seen it, but I couldn't just jump out and tell you until I lay the foundation for you to understand that Jesus already knows all about your struggle. This man has been there for 38 years. Jesus showed up on the spot and knew that he had been ill for a long time and had one question: do you want to be made whole? The paralysis has expired, and yet this man has refused to discard the expired product or his paralysis. Now, there is a distinction between the expiration in quality and the expiration in safety. So while the airborne represents the expiration in quality, the orange juice represents the expiration in safety. I could have gotten sick by drinking expired orange juice, but by taking the pill, I was going to be all right. That just told me that the quality of the product was no longer good. It was compromised. When Jesus said, I have come that you might have life and have life more abundantly, I get it. Some of you are saying, but wait a minute, Pastor. You don't know my situation, but I love what the choir just sang. In every circumstance, I will be content. Jehovah Jireh, you are enough. The only way I knew those products were expired is because there was a date on the product. Remember, now I didn't went in, I bought it, I took it. I told my wife I felt better after just chewing one tablet. I'm not sure exactly if that was the case or not, but I wanted to think that that would have been the case, that I was going to feel better. But when I discovered that it was expired, all of a sudden it changed the way I felt about the product that I had taken. The man's struggle with paralysis did not have a date on it. He struggled with his illness for 38 years. Maybe you have been struggling with your situation. It could be a physical situation or a spiritual situation. Maybe you've been struggling with your situation. It could be a mental or professional situation. It could be a social situation, or it could be a relational situation. It could be a spiritual situation. But the question is, how do you know when your product or your struggle has expired? How do you know? How would this man have known that his product, his paralysis, had expired? How would he have known that? How would he have known that? Well, I have some good news and some bad news. The bad news is I don't have an answer for everyone's individual situation. That's the bad news. But the good news is I think there are a few indicators in the passage of Scripture that we can use to help us get the answer that we need for our particular situation. The first one is in verse 7. He said, someone else always gets there ahead of me. Jesus said, do you want to be made well? Here's his answer. I can't, sir, because I have no one to help me, and someone always gets into the troubled water before I do. The first thing you have to do, the first indicator, is that you become aware that your struggle requires redress or a remedy. He was aware that he was paralyzed. Some of us are in some situations and we don't know we're paralyzed. We don't know that we have some handicaps. We don't know that we are operating with some limitations. And so if you don't know that you are operating with some limitations, it's hard for anyone to help you find the help that you need. He was aware that his struggle, and what I like about his response is after all these years, he is still motivated to get there. He is trying to get there. He said, every time I try to get there, someone gets there first. It's not like he said, I'm not trying anymore. He says, I'm trying, but someone gets there before me. He is trying, but he needs to make adjustments to his strategy. How many of you have been trying, but you know that you need to make some adjustments to your strategy? How do you discern the expiration date on your struggle? The first thing is you got to be aware that your struggle requires a remedy. The second thing is his attitude. I want you to watch this. Jesus says, do you want to be made whole? Now, he's aware that he needs to get into this troubled water, but you got to watch his attitude. He had an I can't, sir, attitude. I'm going to let that sit there for a moment. The first thing you got to do, or the second thing after you become aware, is you got to make sure you are aware of your attitude. Be honest with yourself and recognize that you have an I can't attitude. How many of you got an I can't? No, don't raise your hand because I know some of you are going to be honest and raise your hand. The other you are going to be just sitting there. You ain't going to tell the truth. Y'all going to say, no, nobody else ain't raised their hand. I ain't raising my hand. A struggle will not expire until you decide that it is time to discard your I can't attitude and trade it in for an I can attitude. You got to have an I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me attitude. Now, until you come to terms with the fact that you have an I can't attitude, you will not be able to discard your mat. And let me just throw this in for free. That's perfectly fine. This man had his mat for 38 years. He did not lose his mat until he came to confess his I can't, sir, attitude. There's a few people I was looking up. Eric Clapton, he's a famous guitar player. St. Augustine, he's a theologian. St. Paul, Pastor Dunnigan. All of them and all of us will go to the grave carrying some expired products. I got some I'm carrying right now. I'm preaching to you, but I don't want you to think for one moment that I have learned how to discard all my expired products. I've got some, and the truth of the matter is you do too.
The good news is Jesus knows all about our struggles. And he will guide us till the day is done. There's not a friend like the lowly Jesus. No, not one. No, not one. But you must come to terms with your attitude. Do you have an I've tried this in counseling. I said, well, have you tried this? I tried that. Have you tried this? I tried that. Well, how about this? I tried that. Well, will you make some adjustments on that? Nope, I tried that too. I tried that, and I tried that, and I tried that, and that, and there's no way that it can be fixed. If you say it can't be fixed, it can't be fixed. When you discard the I can't attitude, and you go toward the I can attitude, we can heal you. We can get you right where you need to be, because the problem and the struggle has already reached its expiration date. All you need to do now is to know when to seek assistance. He said in verse 7, I can't, sir, listen, for I have no one to put me into the pool when the water bubbles up. All of us need somebody at some point and sometime along the way. If your ego is too big for you to reach out and ask for help, it's going to be extremely hard to identify that your product, that your struggle has expired. You got to be willing to humble yourself and seek somebody's help, because somebody has already been where you are, and somebody has already come through what you're in the middle of going through, and somebody will know how to get you from where you are to where you're trying to go when you can't get there on your own. Some of us will all need somebody at some time to help us along the way. So don't be so proud that you think you can get through this life without the help of somebody along the way. You got to be aware that your situation needs to be remedied. That's the first thing you got to do. Second thing you got to do is you got to check your attitude. If your attitude says that I can't, just acknowledge that your attitude is an I can't attitude. We'll work on that problem some other time. That's not the one you're ready to work on. That's perfectly fine. You don't have to work on it till you get tired of it. When you get tired of it, then you'll figure out that you can discard the I can't attitude and find someone who can help you to get rid of the problem that's causing you to stay where you are. And when you do, it's one thing to hear, but Jesus saw him, Jesus perceived, and Jesus knew that this man's situation was deeper than what it appeared to be on face value. So he was paralyzed in his physical body. But the truth of the matter is, he had a deeper paralyzation that was going on in his psyche. Some of us are carrying some burdens of guilt from the past that's holding us down. We don't think that we should be relieved from the mistakes that we have made in our past. Our past sins are following us, and we're carrying them. Like Paul said, who shall deliver me from the weight of this old sin that I had, the mess ups that I've had, the tortures that I've done on other believers? Who's going to deliver me from this mess that I have, this baggage that I'm carrying, the mess up that I made in my teens, when I missed the mark in my 20s, when I blew it in my 30s, when I fell short in my 40s? Who's going to deliver me from all of this stuff? See, Jesus said, listen, man, I know you're carrying all of that stuff, but it's time to take action. Sometimes the action is incremental. The first thing you may have to do is just come to terms that now I'm aware that I actually can be delivered from this burden. this struggle. I can actually be really, sometimes you've been holding on to that thing for 38 years, for such a long time, you don't even have in your mind that could possibly be something you could discard. It's like, oh, I just learned to live with it. It's just the way I am. It ain't gonna never change. No, you got to be aware that it can be remedied. And then the second thing, you got to check your attitude. Maybe God is calling me to a higher place in my spiritual journey. Maybe God is moving me up a little higher in my maturity, in my social and relational and spiritual maturity. Maybe God has come that I might have life and life more abundantly rather than being bound by this situation. And maybe I can get through this, but I just got to find the help that I need. And when I find the help that I need and I go to church and I hear the message and I hear that I can relieve myself of this burden, that I can free myself from this mat, that I can be delivered from this struggle, then I've got to be willing to take action. Imagine the man hearing Jesus, and Jesus asked him one question. What was the inquiry? Do you want to be made well? What was his response? I can't, because I don't have anyone to help me. And when I try on my own, somebody gets to the troubled water before I do, and therefore I'm stuck in this situation. See, sometimes we get stuck in a rut as to how to exit and discard the baggage that we are carrying. We think we got to go to the troubled waters. Woo! But sometimes you got to realize Jesus is the bridge over the troubled waters. This man had in his mind as to how to be delivered from his situation, what his remedy was. He said, all I got to do is get to the water. Jesus said, no, you don't. This is what you need to do. Jesus said, this is all you need to do. You need to get up. He said, what? I've been scooting all this time trying to get to the water, and all I got to do is get. Jesus said, get up, bend down, pick up your mat, take your mat, put it under your arms, and you trot on out of here. Sometimes Jesus' healing can be immediately. He can lift you in places where you thought you had to go through a long process. Oh, I know I've got some witnesses. Some folk have gone through 12 steps, but some folks have gone through one step. And that one step was just to take Jesus at his word. 'Tis so sweet to trust in Jesus, just to take him at his word. Just a simple faith to trust him. Oh, to trust him at his word. Jesus said, get up. Imagine a man arguing with Jesus, but I can be. The man could argue with Jesus. He could have said, now look, listen here. I don't know who you are, dude, because he didn't know Jesus. He said, I don't know who you are, dude. But all you got to do is just look around. There's 5 porches around here. And you think we are all here because we want to be here. And now you coming to tell me all I got to do is just get up? If it was that easy, all of us would have just got up. He didn't argue with Jesus. That's what he did. He got up. When you hear a word to deliver you, take action and do what the word tells you to do. Get up. Your deliverance is in the obedience. Get up. Your healing is in the conformity. Get up. Get up. Just get up. Get up. There are times when you have to take action that is incremental. Now here's what I like about this. If you look at this text, it says when Jesus came into Jerusalem, he didn't just hang out at Jerusalem. It said then he went into the inner city. And he didn't just hang out in the inner city. He went to the really bad neighborhood in the inner city. And in the inner city, when he went to the really bad neighborhood, he saw it was a lot of people. But Jesus only went to one, just one man, because he perceived him. And he realized that this man was stuck because he was bound by something going on in his mind. Jesus healed him. Now, here's, and I'm done. When he healed him, he had to take action. First of all, he had to be aware that he needed to be healed. So he was aware of that. How many of you are aware that you need some help somewhere? How many of you are aware of that? You're aware, right? Now, the next question is, have you checked your attitude lately? Just no, this is a question that will help you, because if you think about your attitude is everything. If you say I can, then you must be willing to take the steps to actually do what you say you can do. You can't just say I can and don't do anything about it. He checked his attitude. Jesus says, check your attitude. He said, I can't, sir. Jesus says, but you can, and I'm going to show you how to do it. But I don't have assistance. I'm here. That's why I came, that you might have life and life more abundant. Now, here is the action you need to take. Get up, take up your mat and walk. Man got up. He was so excited. For the first time in a long time, 38 years, he was able to no longer have to hang out where the discarded folk was. He could now go inside the temple and give the Lord some praise. How many of you know when God delivers you, the first place you want to stop is in the house of God to give the Lord some praise? Now just know that your clothes might not be right. There are going to be some folk that you might not smell the best. They were stopping him, saying, hold on, you can't do that. You can't take up your mat and walk because it's the Sabbath. They really wanted to say, you don't smell so good right now. But he came into the house of the Lord anyway to say, who told you to carry your mat on the Sabbath? He said, I don't know what to do. I don't know who he is. He didn't know him. He did not know Jesus. Sometimes when folks are walking by, you kind of know who they are. His man had no clue who Jesus was. All he said was, the man who told me to get up, to pick up my mat and walk. And that's what I did. And I'm here. So if y'all got a problem with that, that's on y'all. But I'm here and I'm healed and my legs are working and I'm walking and I'm all right now. Now, here's how I know Jesus scanned him. Because Jesus later on found him in the temple. And that's what he said to him. He said, listen, he said, you're walking now. He said, but I want you to stop sinning. Because if you keep doing what you were doing before, that got you in the situation that you're in now, something worse is going to happen to you. And that's when the man knew who Jesus was. He went back and told the leading priest, he said, oh, see that dude over there? He got something special going on. He told me, and y'all know I've been sitting here for 30 years. He told me to get up and walk. And all I did was by faith, I listened to what he said. I took action and I'm standing. But it was him over there. And Jesus showed him, listen, you're talking about you can't work on the Sabbath, but I need you to understand the Father is always working. There is never a place where you find yourself where God is not working. So God sees your struggle. He knows your struggle. And believe it or not, God is in the midst of your struggle working right now. That's why you're here on this day, on this Sunday, to get what you need to be free, so that you can take up your mat and walk into 2024 with a new attitude. The question is, how many of you want to grow in 2024? That's about 5 of you. 5 of you want to grow in 2024. But here's the question. Are you willing to take the necessary action to achieve the growth that you desire in 2024? My prayer is that God will speak to your heart through the word today, help you to identify just one area where you want to go ahead and discard your expired struggle. You've got one, and you've been carrying it for quite some time. But Jesus is here today. And like the woman with that issue of blood, all you have to do is reach out and touch the hem of his garment. And the freedom, the liberation, the deliverance is yours this year. It's yours this day. It's yours this moment. If you grab it and hold on to it and do what's necessary, take the necessary action to rise up. Now listen, take up your mat. Now I like this. And walk. You know why I said to do that? In other words, you can't stay where you have been for the last 38 years. You've got to be willing to make progress. So you've got to walk it out. You can't talk it out. You've got to walk it out. It requires action to get to where we're going. Father, we thank you. Thank you for your word that has spoken to our hearts today. I pray that you would allow it to resonate in the depths of the souls of the hearers, that it would not return unto you void, that someone has been delivered today to realize that you are indeed enough. Delivered today to know that in every circumstance, you are already with us. You know our struggle, and you know exactly how much grace to dispense in order for us to endure the struggle until it has expired. So for those expired products of pain and worry and anxiety and bitterness and hatred, oh God, for envy and jealousy, those expired products that no longer have any usefulness in our spiritual journey, we're praying that you would give us the attitude to say, I can release that. I can get rid of it. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me, and then receive the assistance from your word that tells us that your word is a lamp unto our feet and a light unto our pathway. That tells us that you would not put more on us than we are able to bear. That tells us that we are more than conquerors through him that loves us. That tells us that greater is he that is in us than he that is in the world. That tells us that we are overcomers because we are trusting and walking in alignment with your word. Bless those who are hearing today. Bless those who are truly hearing today, that they might receive the assistance and be willing to take the action necessary to walk into 2024 with a new attitude. We thank you, dear God, for what we have heard, for what we have experienced, what we have sensed in the midst of this preaching moment. And we give you the praise, the glory, and the honor. In Jesus' name we pray. And together our hearts say amen.
Thank you for joining us. See you next week. We upload our podcast every Sunday at 7 p.m. Thanks again, and have a great day.